Welcome to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. I'm host Lanasha Pawadi. Jarvisson King is the owner and operator of Laughing Goat Gardens, providing produce, fine wool, mohair and wool pallets, and pasture-raised beef located in Sanders, Arizona. Welcome to our show, Jarvisson.
Oh, thank you. Yep, it's great to be here.
Absolutely. And before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and your background?
Sure. My name is Jarvisson King. I started Laughing Goat Gardens in 2015. And prior to starting, well, I think I mentioned, I was like, I think I'm already answering one of the questions, but like the journey, like how we had started where we live at the time in 2014. I moved back in 2014 to Sanders, where we live, in an area called, they call it Newlands area, which is outside of the town limits of Sanders. But it was a food desert at that time. We didn't have the batches we currently have now in Sanders. So, that was one of the reasons I started that gardening, because living here in Phoenix at the time for quite a while, actually, about 8 years or so, I got into with friends that were kind of health nuts at the time, and they were all about plant-based diets, eating healthy. When I moved back up there to take care of my mom, it was just like, where do we go? We got to drive an hour to the east, to an hour to the west, an hour south just to get fresh produce. So I was telling my mom, I was like, I'm going to start a garden. So that was probably like towards the end of 2015, or not towards 2015, 2014 that I did that, because my aunt was doing a harvest festival at her place. And after I saw that and interacted with my cousins and my uncles and my aunt herself, I was like, wow, this is what I need at home. This is so awesome. And I never gardened in my life before that, so every now and then I would just water the corn that my mom and dad would plant, and that's like all the exposure I had. So after attending my aunt's harvest festival, I really got motivated to get into gardening. And from then on, it just kind of, about 2016, I kind of ran out of ideas for the gardening stuff for my Instagram. At the time, I was just taking pictures. I took pictures, did a little video of me feeding my sheep and goats in the wintertime, and that caught traction, and people on Instagram were like, dude, we need to see more of that. Like, show us more of your animals. They're so cute, the little lambs and the kids. So I kind of implemented the sheep and goats from then on. And the following year, I offered pasture-raised beef, and that caught a little bit of traction. So I started adding the beef to that part. And last year, our herd got into a fill of burrs, and I guess it was meant to be. It came kind of full circle. We didn't know what to do with the wool. We couldn't sell it. We couldn't spin it. We couldn't do anything with it because it was full of burrs. We found a lady through a mutual friend that has a pellet mill. So I spoke with her, and she was, we went down there, dropped off her wool. She showed us how, she makes the wool pellets. So after that, we did more research on the wool pellets, and we use it for gardening now. We actually haven't really fully used it in the garden yet since last year. In October was it when that mill actually created the wool pellets for us. So it's just kind of still in the early phases of it right now. But this coming year, we are really excited to get to like fully experience the potential of the wool pellets. So.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. Yeah. And kind of starting off on your business, how did you come up with the name Laughing Goat Gardens?
Yeah, that was 2015, the first time I actually planted my 2 gardens. So in Navajo tradition, there's like do's and don'ts, the taboos, like in the garden and everything like that. So during harvest time, my mom and my uncle came by, and I went to the garden, and I picked some cantaloupe and some watermelon. I brought them in, and we were starting to eat them, and my uncle saw the watermelon, and he noticed that it had a crack in it. And, he was saying that somebody was probably laughing when they were planting this, So, because in Navajo tradition, they say, like, if a watermelon has a crack in it, it's because you were probably laughing when you were planting it, or you were laughing when you were tending to the garden. At that time, I was trying to come up with a name for the farm, for the garden. That kind of played part of it. And I was trying to find something to integrate that with. And I was like, why am I looking for something while I can just take part of me? So the laughing was from that. I mean, I have a weird sense of humor. So I kind of laugh at myself a majority of the time. I laugh about everything. And then the second part, the goat, is my Navajo clan. Our Navajo clan is mini goats. So I just put those two together. So I put laughing and goat. So like Laughing Goat Farm, Laughing Goat Ranch. I was going through these names, and I had 2 gardens at the time. And I was like, I have 2 gardens. Laughing Goat Garden, Laughing Goat Gardens. So it just kind of came together. It's just like Laughing Goat Gardens. And that's how the name came upon. So yeah, so it was kind of like with a taboo, then my clan, and then just what I have, the gardens. So, yeah, that's how the name came about. So.
Oh, wow. And I know earlier you mentioned kind of how you started your garden journey is when you went back home to take care of your mom, and you noticed like there's not a near grocery store where you live. So what outlets did you look to kind of get information on how to begin gardening?
Yeah, that was in 2014. I moved back to take care of my mom. She also had diabetes at the time too, so that was kind of like another part of growing healthy food. And like after attending my aunt's harvest festival, I came back. I started doing research on gardening. There was one book I found from an author, Jean-Martin Fortier. That's his name, and his book was The Market Gardener. It was actually translated into English from French, so it was really interesting to read that book. When I saw some of his videos online on what he was doing with it, his market garden on 1 acre of land, that I was like, wow, I can do that, I think. So I bought the book, I read the book, and that just like kind of blew my mind as like what a small plot of land can produce for a community. For him, he's doing it for a community. He does CSA and everything like that, which is a community supported agriculture. So for me, I was like, I can do that for myself and my mom. We can have fresh produce whenever we want, 9 months of the year, at least, if I do it right. According to the book, I can do it 9 months of the year. So that's one book that really got me started. And the second book that I had purchased along with that was The Soul of Soil. A really technical book. I don't suggest that as a second book or anything for anybody. If you're getting into gardening, that's like an advanced book. I'd say like make that like number 20 something after you understand gardening, after you understand soil a little bit more. Because as my second book, oh man, I was like, what is that and what is that? But I struggled through it. I read it and I was like, but again, it helped me understand soil a little bit better. So those 2 books are the ones that kind of kick-started me into understanding gardening a lot more, understanding soil, and then understanding how to plan the garden and how to, the market gardener was how to market your produce to the community. At the time, I was like, it's just for us. So I wasn't really marketing it to the community at all. So, but yeah, that's the 2 that made really influence me to start, to get a grasp that knowledge to start. And after that, it just kind of books just started coming in, and I would find podcasts and I would listen to it, and all these other farmers and gardeners would talk about how they're doing things, how they're taking care of their garden. So there's just a lot of I guess, influences out there that really help me understand and help me get into the gardening part of it.
Mm-hmm. And how do you incorporate your indigenous heritage into Laughing Goat Gardens?
Yeah, that was one of the ones I was like, how do I do that? But I think for me personally, a lot of the, like for my mom, I would ask her when I started, like, how did they used to garden, back before there were tractors and whatnot, and a lot of it was just dry land farming. Or my grandpa, she would tell me that her dad, my grandpa, would go into, we used to live way out north. I just call it the old res, the old homestead. 2 canyons. They would go to like one of the canyon bases, and right near the stream, they would just find a good area and they would plant there. So they would constantly like watered. So but I was like, we don't have that here where we live. But just finding a lot of being creative in a sense, and to learn and to understand and to adapt. I think that's like the biggest thing that I took from my mom, and I believe that's like been inherited to me. For me, I think that's like, like an inheritance that's given to you. I believe that's like the definition of heritage, is like something that you inherit. So it's just to learn, to understand, and then to keep gaining that knowledge and to become a better version of yourself, and to just keep getting better at what you do. Like with the garden, my goal was to increase the organic matter in my soil, because the first year I started, I had like maybe 1.2 organic matter. And if you're into soil and you understand that, that's like really not a whole lot. It's like basically nothing. By the 4th year, I had increased that to 12.3, and with that, I mean, that's 12-fold. I was just like so surprised, and that's like an accomplishment that I was like so happy about. That I'm like, one of my friends that I had talked to, it's like, dude, this is so awesome, because she was into the whole soil conservancy and all that, and she understood those numbers. I'm like, this is so awesome. And the pH level would drop a little bit, because where we are, we have a really alkaline soil. Like the pH is at 8, so like really can't grow anything like in a alkaline soil. So we had to add salt to it to bring it down, or sulfate to bring it down, just to make it kind of grow most of the vegetables that we have. But yeah, so it's just like mainly learning, adapting, and just keep gaining that knowledge to get better at what you are doing and what you are working on. I think that's like the best thing that you can inherit, the best thing that you can get passed on, with in any culture, I think.
Oh, yes, definitely. And kind of what you're doing now, starting your Laughing Goat Gardens is kind of like a new tradition that you can pass on to the next generation as well, so they could learn all of that great knowledge that you have to offer as well. So can you tell us more about, I know you mentioned earlier the wool pallet. Can you tell us more about that product? Like, what is it used for and who can benefit from it?
Yeah, absolutely. The wool pellets, we just kind of stumbled upon that last year after doing research on it. When that came kind of on our radar, like maybe this is a possibility that we can do. This is what we can turn our wool into. That we started doing more research on it, talking to people that have a little more knowledge with wool pellets. That, from the research that we did, it was just more what the wool pellet is capable of doing is that it retains moisture in your soil. So when the wool gets wet, it'll expand, and then upon expanding, it'll also aerate your soil, which will bring more oxygen, nitrogen from the air into the roots of your plant. And the third thing it does is that it once it starts decomposing, it'll add all the nutrients from the wool into your soil as well. So it acts as a fertilizer as well, a slow release fertilizer, which all natural fertilizers are, or they're slow release. They're not like the chemical fertilizers where like ammonium sulfate, which is used for nitrogen, that once you add it and you wet it, it immediately gets to work, but that just kind of goes to the plant. Whereas a natural fertilizer like the wool pellet, it'll actually go into the soil, whereas the soil will feed the plant. So it doesn't go straight to the plant, it goes to the soil. So that's like the three biggest benefits of the wool pellet. So as I mentioned earlier, our herd had gone into a field of burrs, so we couldn't really do anything with it. So we just had all the wool off the sheep, and they just shredded and they grinded it down, and it got turned into pellets. So that's basically what the wool pellet is. It's just the waste wool that gets turned into a pellet. So it's like all 100% natural wool. Nothing is added to it. Maybe just a little bit of water to kind of help form the pellet. Other than that, there's really nothing. There's nothing else added.
And on your website, you had mentioned how your family grew up. Did you guys always have livestock?
Oh, yes, we did, yeah. I grew up like 3 years old. Me and my uncle, we would be herding sheep. He was probably like 2 or 3 years older than me. You know, we were herding sheep, and this is where we used to live, way out on the Olores. And I mean, our nearest neighbor was a couple of my aunts. They're probably 2 miles away. Other than that, it's just forest, wildlife, and canyons. And I always used to say, like, I don't know how we survived. We didn't have no food on us. We didn't have no water, but I think we just ate what the sheep and goats were probably eating. And we would go out with the herd every day during the summertime, and then we'd come back in the afternoon, like towards the evening, and pen them up. And yeah, that's, I mean, my oldest memories is like we always had sheep and goats, and we had horses and cattle as well. So wow. Just growing up with that, and we brought that over to where we got relocated to, and then from there things changed a little bit, but it kind of, we still had the animals and the livestock. So yeah.
And then I know back then you never kind of thought of your livestock creating that into a business. How do you incorporate that into a business today?
I think the biggest thing is, well, I guess for me personally, the experience that I've had in life. I went to school as a graphic designer and web designer, and just as being a designer alone, you get the opportunity to do a lot of freelance work. If you get the opportunity to do freelance work, you talk to people, you start, interacting with potential clients or actual clients that you do gain. So that's basically like a business already that once it gains traction, you can, start your own design company, which I never did, but just experiences like that. And then from then on, you can branch into, I think a lot of designers branch off into becoming like t-shirt designers and such like that. So I did that as well. So, a lot of these we just kind of do for fun and not really look at it as a business. But in the future, I do look back now that a lot of the things that I did like that, they were, I guess, for a reason, that now that I can look at my animals as a business, that I can, sell live animals to make money, to sell pasture-raised meat, lamb, goat meat, beef, as, for money, and also their fiber as well, the mohair, the fine wool, and also turning the wool into wool pellets as well. So, and then the produce as well. Just like with the produce, I never thought of selling it until I was talking to a teacher where I work at. It's like, I mentioned that, I have some veggies that I grew in my garden and all this, and it was just a natural conversation that went into a transaction where she started telling other teachers, and other teachers started coming to me, and they're like, we want to buy some, dude. Like, I heard it's really good, and that's kind of how I started selling the produce where I work. And so it just got kind of caught on like that. So and it's like, I can actually do this. So I just kept doing that year after year, and it just gained traction. And yeah, so it just looking at it from a different perspective instead of just looking at it as a hobby or just like a pastime.
Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah. And how you mentioned how you wanted to bring more healthier options back to your mom and just for yourself. And now as you grow your own garden, your own produce and your own meat on what they are grazing on, you're pretty well aware of everything that they're eating. So everything they're eating, you're also consuming is what you had mentioned earlier. So it's just amazing how you incorporated that into your business as well. So what are your day-to-day or weekly duties like as a farmer rancher?
A lot of the time, I think day-to-day prior to March of last year was taking them out, observing where they go, and then, just kind of, all right, it's enough time for them to come back, or they would come back on their own, pin them up. That was like routine for them for prior to March of last year when I started what I'm doing now. Prior to that, I always used to say, like on my videos when I talk about pasture management, that if you took an aerial shot back then, that you would see where they go, and it would just probably be a trail because that's the only place they go every day because that's like where all their favorite vegetation is. So with the way I have it now, with the paddock setup, it makes them eat, or it makes them graze the entire pasture equally, like at an even rate, because they're covering, I give them a little section for a week and then move them to the next section and move them to the next section. So it just keeps going. And we cover the entire pasture area that we have. And at the end of the year, it's evenly grazed. And once the moisture comes, they'll grow back evenly as well. So it's just a lot of pasture management. So every day last year when I started, I was moving them every day, just setting up one paddock, moving them, tearing this one down, setting up this one, and then move them. So that was every day, just, taking this one down, setting up, taking this one down, setting up. But now I actually bought a little bit more netting to where I can set up. Just because it was winter, I had to, because the days were shorter. When I got home after work, I'm like, I can't do this. There's like no time. It's going to get dark. It's going to be cold. So it's like more like the daylight was like kind of the enemy at the time. So I purchased like 3 more nettings, and I made the paddock a little bit bigger. And just to test it out, 1 week, I put them in there, and I just watched them for the entire week, like how long it would take. I mean, it took them 6 days to graze everything down to where it was just enough to where that it's not overgrazed. It's just grazed like the proper amount. So it's like, well, I can probably take a day off of there and make it 5 days. And that would work with my schedule. So Monday to Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday, I can just do enough space for 2 days and then set up the big one for that week. So that's just like, now it's just a weekly basis to where set up a 2x2 setup that's enough for 5 days, and then set up a 1x2 setup that's enough for 2 days. So that's like the weekly now. This coming spring and summer, I'm not exactly sure how. Probably stay with that, but with more vegetation. But still, it's like I don't want to overgraze the pasture. Yes. So that's like the biggest thing. So.
We'll continue our interview with Jarvisson King after this short break. Support for KRDP 90.7 FM comes in part from Native Health, with 2 locations in Phoenix, 4041 North Central Avenue, Building C, near the corner of Central Avenue and Indian School Road, and at 2423 West Dunlap Avenue. Native Health is also located in Mesa at 777 West Southern Avenue, near the corner of Southern Avenue and Extension Road. Native Health provides primary medical, dental, behavioral health, WIC, and wellness services for the urban Native American community. For more information, call 602-279-5262 or visit our webpage at nativehealthphoenix.org. Native Talk Arizona returns after this song. You're listening to Reap and Sow by One Way Sky.
tired of the cost, and now I don't know what I've lost. Reap and sow, reap and sow. Reap and sow, reap and sow.
Welcome back to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. I'm host Lanasha Puwadi. We're continuing our interview with Jarvisson King, owner and operator of Laughing Goat Gardens.
And I've also read on your website that you also do fresh eggs as well.
We did, yes. That's a funny story. I don't know if you got time for a pretty long story, but I used to have layer eggs or layer chickens. 2020 Thanksgiving was the last I had fresh eggs because I always say it's a funny story. I was like, I enjoyed my Thanksgiving meal, and then the coyotes came down they enjoyed their Thanksgiving meal too. But yeah, 2020 Thanksgiving, I had my layer chickens, and somehow they got out of their coop, and one jumped over the netting. It looks like the coyote came down, got that one, and the coyote jumped the netting somehow and got into the coop, and it killed all my chickens.
Oh, no.
But this year we're planning on getting the layer eggs back, or the layer chickens. So I also raised meat chickens as well, so that was a fun experience. So my nephew can tell you all the details on that. He helped me process the first batch of meat chickens. So that was a fun experience after that. So yeah, so that was fun. So, but yeah, this year we're planning to get back into that. We're just working out a lot of because I started doing the sheep a different method. So it's kind of rebalance it out. So along with a full-time job, it's makes things a little bit harder. So in 2019, I had left my job, so I was able to take care of all of that. That was my full-time job. Later in 2020, I went back just as a part-time, and then went back to full-time again. And it's like, I missed the farm, so it's like I need to go back to that. So this year we're planning to get the eggs and the meat birds back. So. But yeah, they're fun though. The little chickens, have them running around, and they're pretty easy animals to take care of. So they basically take care of themselves. And just like with the sheep, I used to move them every 2 or 3 days. I would set up a net for them, and they would just eat the vegetation, the natural vegetation there. And I gave them minimal grain. I would just give them scratch grain, and that was it. So, and they just ate all the bugs in the garden, and they were my tillers, and they're the ones that prepped my garden. So I actually got that from one of the homesteaders that I follow on YouTube. His name is Justin Rhodes, and he uses his chickens to do that. So I was like, that's cool. I'm going to do that with my chickens. And they did. They scratch everything up. They take all the bugs out. Yeah, it's a really good way to do it. So I mean, the chicken manure is high in nitrogen as well. So. And that's just another amendment for your soil, and you don't have to rototill your soil. So, yeah. And there's so many ways to take care of your soil, but for me, I chose that route that year, and it really worked. The following year, I did that again, and it worked. Yeah.
And kind of talking about how your farm has been evolving. I've also read that you maybe in the future also want to bring in some pigs as well.
Yes, definitely. Carmen keeps asking, we should get pigs. I'm like, not ready for it yet, but in the next couple of years, I'm pretty sure we will be. But yeah, we definitely want to get some pigs, do our own pork. When I was doing the beef, people would ask me, do you raise pigs? And I was like, not yet, but we will. So, but yes, that is definitely in the future. So. That would be very interesting, just to experience a pig and then raise it and process it ourselves, or not ourselves, but we have to take it to a processor. We don't have I don't have the equipment to do all of that. So we just take it to a processing place, and they do that for us.
Where would you want to see Laughing Goat Gardens in 5 years?
Well, right now we're focused on the wool pellets. I think that's basically the one that we're prioritizing at the moment. I think with Laughing Goat Gardens, our wool pellets would be wanting to do at least in the southwestern region to be known for the wool pellets. It's not just for us to be known. What we're doing with the wool pellets is that we're sourcing it from the Navajo shepherds off the reservation, because in the wool industry is like very weird. You go to a wool broker every year. On a good year, you'll probably get about 15, 20 cents per pound for wool. That's not even the national average. And in turn, they just give you, oh, here, you fill this out to your FSA agent, your FSA office, and they'll reimburse you to cover that gap, what they purchased the wool for, and then the national average price to cover that gap. For us, what we want to do is pay the Navajo shepherds the national average price so that we can give them the price that they deserve and then save time so they don't have to fill out that paper saying that we got 5 cents per pound for a wool. Now we got to fill this out to get 35 cents per pound, that gap right there, and we got to wait for a check for about 3 or 4 months from USDA. Like, we want to save the time for them. We'll give them the national average price, and if we keep, in my mind, I'm like, if we keep working with the same shepherds and they like what we're doing, eventually we'll increase the price per pound for them. So that way, they're our customer, and our customers know where they're getting their wool from, the wool pellets. So, like right now, we bought a couple of shepherds, one from Greasewood and Otisto. So we want to make it like transparent enough on our packaging that this is sourced from this area on the reservation. So like the one from Greasewood would have a stamp that says sourced from a shepherd from Greasewood, Arizona, or something like that. And then the shepherds that want to do an interview, I'll be happy to do an interview with them, take a photo, and have them tell their story of their herd as well. And then, that way, at least, on the website, we can direct people, our customers, like, this is where this bag of wool pellets is coming from this shepherd. It's like, you're not helping us, you're helping this person way out there in a remote reservation area. She couldn't sell her wool because it's full of burrs, but we helped her. We bought her wool at 50 cents per pound. So in turn, you're really helping them. You're not really helping us. We're just kind of like the mediators, I feel like, because I want to help them. Because what she was going to do was she was just going to bury the wool or try to burn it. And it was just like, well, we'll take it from you. So we'll even give you, this much for it. So she was happy with it. And that's where I see the wool pellet side going. I think we're more focused on the wool pellets right now. But along with that, we kind of have to balance a lot of things. So the fiber side, I think more like the fine mohair that we want to get into as well. Because we just had a lot of crossbred Angora goats, but this last year we got more serious and focused on just improving the Angora goat in our herds. So. But yeah, I think getting better wool, getting better mohair, and really pushing the wool pellets for Laughing Goat Gardens in the next 5 years. So that's, I think, where we would like to be, is at least in the Southwest. Like, hey, get your wool pellets from Laughing Goat Gardens, and possibly even nationwide. But there's a lot of small farms, a lot of homesteads that raise sheep, and they create their own wool pellets. So it's like we just want to more focus where we are. I think it's more of a regional thing, and then trying to dominate like a nation. But it's like there's a lot of smaller farmers out there that are doing the same thing we're doing, and we just want to be part of it for where we are, and in turn help our own people as well. So.
Oh, yes, definitely. And what would you say drives or motivates you?
I'd say just the experience of having a garden. I love the process of anything. Like when I started gardening, there was the failures, and then with those failures came knowledge. So it's like the process. A lot of people, I think they highlight the success, the final piece, especially on social media now. Like even gardeners, a lot of them, they don't show you their struggle. For me, I try to show everything that, goes on a daily basis, weekly basis on my farm. If I'm struggling with something, I'll create a video and I'll ask, like, has anyone ever experienced this? What was your solution? And in turn, I create your own little community of people. Like with the wool side, we have our own little community that if there's something going on with a sheep or a goat, I know who to contact. So it's just like the process that I think that, really motivates me, and then in turn meeting new people, and just also like from the previous question, that answer that I gave is like helping our people with the wool. So that's the wool side, is like helping them. That's like really the driving force of us. So yeah, and for me, it's just like the process of all that and gaining the knowledge from our failures. So, I mean, at a young age, my mom used to tell me that. Just like when I started the garden, it's like a long time ago, we didn't used to garden like that. She only spoke in Navajo, so a lot of the stuff that I say, I try to translate it into English. But yeah, she used to say like, and it's just like, that's not how we did it. We used to do it this way. But now it's like, just because we have a small plot of land, she would just always say, go ahead, try it. You won't know the outcome of something until you try it. So she was like my number one supporter and motivator when I started. She would always, even at a young age, she would say, go learn how to do something properly, do it the right way. If you mess up, do it again. It's like, don't be afraid to fail. So I always keep that in my head, and that's kind of my motivation as well. Even if I mess up on something, it's like, well, that's one way not to do it. So it's like, okay, we'll try it again and we'll do it a different way. So, but yeah, I think that's my main motivation, is just the process of everything I'm doing.
Oh, yes, definitely. Kind of talking about that process. What would you consider to be one of your biggest accomplishments?
I'd say actually growing vegetable. That was like my first year, I think, when I actually did. I was super happy that I actually grew my spring crops, the cool weather crops, because in the springtime, we're battling the wind where we live, and the wind is like our biggest enemy up there. I always say that. It's like, it's the wind. The wind is the one that devours everything, erosion and all this. So, but in the springtime, the first year, I wanted to get an early start, planted everything. This is when it's so crazy when you start gardening. You never notice like how observant you will become of nature, the weather patterns and everything. So my first spring, I planted my spring crops, and 2 weeks later, when they were like just emerging and sprouting, the spring winds came. Blew everything away. I was like, oh man, this sucks. I was like, but the following year, I got row covers. I kind of got prepared for the wind, and they actually grew, and it stopped the wind from blowing my little sprouts, my seedlings away. And I think that was like one of my biggest accomplishments, is that, yes, I beat the wind. So it's like, that was like one of my most memorable accomplishments that I've had. Along with, after that, early morning after the winds had died down, I think that year we had like 50-mile-per-hour winds, because my row covers were covered with sand, and they were covering some of the little sproutlings, and I had to uncover them. But like when they got bigger, the kale, they grew. The radish, they grew as well. And I was going to check on the sheep and goats that day. And on my way back, I went into the garden, was like checking on them, and I had pulled out a radish. And I was like, wow, this is so awesome. And I just like kind of cleaned it off, and I was kind of hesitant to eat it because if you're new to gardening like I was kind of like, should I eat this? And I kind of like take a bite of it, and it's just like, wow, this is so good. And it's like one of the most memorable accomplishments I have is that I overcame the wind in a sense and actually grew my cool weather crops in the springtime, and I was there to enjoy a radish, and then later on enjoy the spinach and the kale and the lettuce. And I would just pick those, and that was my breakfast before I went to work. And I would just pick some and I give it to my mom, and my mom would eat it, and she would just eat that for breakfast too.
And kind of talking about all of this, you've had a lot of great advice so far. What advice would you share with somebody who wants to enter farming and ranch field?
I'd say just it's just something you really want to get into. I mean, if you really have a desire to do it, just do it, you know. I don't want Nike coming after me for saying that, but like just to do it, you know. It's like if it's really something you want to do. I know people that grew up with it, they move away from it, they get back into it, or some of them, they've never experienced it and they want to get into it. Yeah, it's like just do it. Just make sure you're prepared to really enjoy the process, because in gardening, there's more failures than successes. You're gonna kill millions of plants, and it's just a part of gardening. It's all about gaining knowledge. It's like those quotes where they say like you plant a seed and you grow and all this. So it's basically the reflection of gardening. It's just planting a seed, taking care of it, and, you know, learning through that entire process. Like I mentioned earlier, when you get into gardening, you don't know how observant of nature you will become. Because growing up, I would observe little hints here and there. But when I got into gardening, I started noticing temperature drops, wind changes, what time of the year the sunlight changes, where the wind will change, when the rain comes, the monsoon, the snow, and you'll start seeing subtle changes in the sunlight, the clouds, you know, the wind, and you become more observant. And the soil as well, you'll start seeing, as your soil starts getting better, you'll start noticing different bugs coming into your garden, like good bugs, like beneficial insects, and then you got the bad bugs as well. My second year, when I planted squash, I lost 95% of my squash to squash bugs. I mean, that was devastating, but you start reading about it. That's the year I got into cover crops, because I wanted to attract the beneficial insects, because like the people that study the natural way of gardening, they say that for every one bad bug, there's like 100 beneficial insects that's a predator to that, you know, that bad bug. They call them bad bugs, but like the horned tomato worm, they'll devour your tomatoes in a night. Aphids and, you know, squash bugs, all these other bugs that are like that love to just devour home gardens. So I started working with cover crops, which I just plant in the fall, and then in the springtime. At that time, I had only done winter rye, and just the winter rye by itself, it was just green manure. I rototilled it into the ground, and that, you know, decomposed, and it put all the nitrogen and everything that was in the crop into the soil. So that, you know, that really helped the soil. And ever since we started gardening back 2 years ago, that we started focusing more on beneficial insects and the pollinators. So this coming year, what we want to do is just plant a field of flowers to attract the beneficial insects and to attract the pollinators. I've always wanted to do this, but I just really never found the time to do it. It was like build birdhouses and strategically place them around the garden. They call them like beneficial insect hotels. You know, you have like the little holes, and you know, there's different bugs that that can live in there, and they'll just grow and they'll help you with your insect problems. So it's just learning with things like that, working with nature, but just learn how to work with nature. So I mean, if you're getting into it, just understand that you have to. This also depends on how you want to raise your food, grow your food. For me, I wanted it to be all natural amendment, so that's why I'm going to natural amendment route. So pollinators, beneficial bugs, wool pellets in a sense as well too. So blood meal, bone meal, just natural stuff. So yeah, but I'd say just ask yourself if this is something you really want to do. Even if you're unsure, just give it a try. You never know. You might really enjoy it. So, and some people are naturally green-thumbed. For me, I really wasn't, and I just learned how to take care of it, and I learned that the soil is what you have to take care of, and that's the one that gives you the fruit. So that's one thing that's, just understand that. Take care of your soil. And when you start, just start experimenting. That's basically just what life is. It's like experimenting and finding out. Maybe you'll find a way that works for you. And then just read as much as you can from the people that have done it before you, and use their methods, tweak their methods, and to help you understand. So.
Oh, yes, definitely. Like you mentioned, knowledge is the key, and just always wanting to learn more. Like you said, you read all of those books, and then you went to the workshops to gain all of that knowledge and information to start your garden, which is amazing. Jarvisson, can you tell our listeners how they can learn more about Laughing Goat's Garden and how they can contact you if they have further questions?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a website, laughinggoatgardens.com. I try my best to update that as much as I can with whatever we're doing. If we're going a new direction, I'll update the website, or if we have a new product, I usually update up there. Like the pasture-raised beef and the produce, they're pretty seasonal. They come and go whenever we have them, so that's the time I would update something on the website. A majority of the time, though, my Instagram and my TikTok is where you can get the updates within that week or within that day of what's going on the farm. So I'd say my Instagram and TikTok is at LaughingGoatG, and that's our account handle. You can find, I'd say, the most up-to-date information there. We also have a Facebook, but I don't really update that one as much. I found that my followers are more on Instagram and TikTok. But I still do post content to my Facebook. We also have a YouTube channel where I do the long-form videos talking about... during the summer times, I usually talk about just do like a weekly overview, or if I have a certain area that I want to talk about, within that week. Like 2 weeks ago, I talked about pasture management, just giving my own thoughts on it, where we are to prevent erosion, wind erosion, rain erosion. So you can find us on those channels, and that's where we are.
Perfect. Well, I would like to thank you, Jarvisson, for coming in today to tell us more about your Laughing Goat Gardens and all of the amazing products you guys have, like the wool pallet, and also just sharing your journey with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I mean, was really looking forward to it. I was kind of nervous, but yeah.
Thank you for listening to Native Talk Arizona, supported by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. Audio editing by Javier Quiroga, and the executive producer is Susan Levy. And I'm host Lanasha Pawadi. We hope you tune in again next week. If you have any questions, please email us at nativetalkaz@radiophoenix.org.